The longer you hesitate between yes and no, the longer you're going to be tormented in this life. As long as you don't understand that compromise is in an impossible position spiritually, you're going to be torn back and forth between yes and no. You must get to the point where even if you don't understand all that's involved in a yes toward truth, even if you don't understand where it's going to take you, what it's required of you, even if you don't understand the risks, never mind what you don't understand about it. Say yes 100%. Only when you do that will all your questions be answered. Will all the pains start to become lighter and lighter and lighter and disappear altogether. I know that within you is still the hope and the belief that you can linger in no man's land between yes and no. That you can wander out there and be happy. I am telling you, as a factual statement, that you can and you must repeatedly say yes. If you will do that, you will increasingly see the necessity for saying yes, 100% yes. Even if the start, as I said, if you don't understand it, one small, pure yes is all you can have. But that is good. You're never required to do more than you can do. Yes, I'm going to go all out. Yes, I'm going to turn my back on this sick society. I'm going to turn my back on everything that is limited, everything that seems to offer me something that promises me something good. I'm going to turn my back on being my own worst enemy. Yes, I'm turning toward the light. Now here's the point, the main point just now of what I'm talking about. Give up all hope that you can find a position in between yes and no. Impossible. You've been trying it. You've been looking for it. You've been praying for it. You've been associating with people and events and your own ideas and thoughts, hoping that you can find a comfortable position. You'll never find it. Out in no man's land, the battle is raging with the shots and the shells and the machine guns and the bayonets. Wherever you are is what you suffer from, and you're out there thinking you can win the battle out there. You can't win it. You can only get out of the battle. But you say, if I stay in the battle, maybe I'll get a medal. I'll be promoted to general. I'll be someone. Besides, I like the very idea of the excitement of fighting. The only way you'll ever win the battle is to get off the battlefield. And there's a different kind of battle required of you inwardly to do that. The land of peace outside the battlefield is now considered by you to be a fierce enemy, something to be feared, something to stay away from. A man with a battle mind, a woman with a fierce mind and fierce emotions will always consider any situation not like him or her as the enemy. Peace becomes the enemy to a person whose only life is concerned with and revolves around fighting and agony. And you tell this to people who are on the battlefield and they won't understand you. Let me remind you of something that you can take home with you. There's a warning signal inside of every human being, inside of you, that warns you against salvation, against deliverance. And a truth comes up in this class, in a book, anywhere, and the truth comes up and the warning signal goes off and says, beware of that. You are where you should be, where it is fun, where it's exciting, and where you'll get true rewards. These people don't know how vicious they are. They're telling you, stay with the viciousness of the battlefield and be part of us. Beware of anyone who tells you of another life outside this life of battling. They never use the word vicious, they use the word kindly. They never use the word sickness, they use the word health, because they're referring to themselves. Of course, we are healthy. Don't you go into that unhealthy land. Their ways are the ways of deceit and destruction. And you are being warned this morning that you had better make your choice. Never mind the people out there. They have made their choice by not being here this morning. Their choice is made. I'm talking to you. I want you to become stronger by understanding what I'm talking about. Make up your mind which you want. If you'll come here, the truth will help you to make the right decision. All right, there was once a man who loved the open sea and he loved boats. So he decided to build his own boat the way he wanted it to be. So he went out to his big workshop out there and he spent months, a couple years, building the boat just exactly as he wanted it to be, just for him, for his comfort, his convenience, for his learning about the sea, for his traveling. Just the way he wanted. The day finally came when he, with great pleasure, brought the ship down to the ocean, launched it out, stood at the helm, and set out to sea. And it was a lovely life, beautiful life. He loved the ocean and the breezes, and he loved the idea of going to this island and that island over there, going ashore a little bit, and then getting back in the boat. He liked that. This was his life, the way he wanted on his boat. After sailing around for several weeks, one day he was out in the open sea, and he spotted something out in the waves there, bobbing up and down. And of course, he said, I'd better investigate and find out what that is. So he turned the boat in that direction. And when he got close, he saw it was a castaway on a raft. And the man on the raft was all in tattered clothes and waving frantically, and the boatman waved back to assure him that he'd been seen. Got the boat over, helped the castaway into the boat, and they discussed things. And the castaway said, thank you, I can't thank you enough for spotting me. I've been out here for 3 weeks. I didn't think I was going to make it, but thanks to you I have. And the boatman, of course, felt quite flattered that he had saved the man from the sea. And he put him down in the bunk and got him food and let the man recover his strength. In a day or two, he was okay again. And the castaway was so grateful, he started offering to do things for the boat owner. He said, breakfast is up to me from now on. I'm going to fix us both breakfast in the morning. The boatman said, fine, that's very good. And later on, the rescued man said, I noticed that slight little adjustments and repairs on your boat could be made, and I'd be glad to contribute my time and labor, and when we get back to port, to fix your boat up as you want it, the way you want it. And the man felt flattered by that. He said, fine. When we get back, we can make some adjustments. There are some small things I'd like to change. So they got along real well. But a few days later, the boatman looked out and he saw another castaway out there. This time it was a woman, kind of an attractive woman. He liked the way she looked. So she came on board. And she expressed her gratitude too, and even hinted that she was single and he was. Maybe they'd eventually have a romance or something. And he liked that too. Over the next several days, 8 or 9 castaways were spotted out on the ocean, and they all came into his boat. And he thought that was a little bit unusual, but maybe they all came from the same ship or something. And after these 8 or 9, 10 people were on board for a few days, he began to notice a little bit different attitude on their part, right? He began to notice that instead of showing their gratitude, they began making little requests with a very stern face. Could you possibly take us over to this port? This is where we'd like to go. And he said, well, I want to go there. And they said, but look, you rescued us. You have to take care of us now. We'd like to go over there. And he said, but when I set out on the sail myself, I wanted to go over this place and you want me to go. And they started quarreling, mildly at first, with each other. And gradually, he began to see that they were taking over his boat. But that was just the beginning of his trouble. All these grateful people, instead of making breakfast, were sitting around down the bunk below wondering why he didn't make breakfast for them and why he didn't do what they wanted to do. And he actually began to be afraid of these people, but he smiled at them because he wanted to keep them good in their good graces, because he knew that there was 8 or 9 of them and only 1 of him. And what he feared would happen did happen. One night, at midnight, he felt half a dozen hands grabbing him, hauling him up to the deck, and tossed him overboard, off his own boat. And the shock of the water gave him energy to look around and see where he was, and he did see land over there, and he was a good swimmer, so he managed to swim to shore. And he laid on the beach there, exhausted and shocked at what had happened to him. And he couldn't understand it. How he'd been so kind to these people, and they'd taken advantage of it and turned the exact opposite of what they appeared to be. He'd saved their life, he said. I saved their life, and they tossed me overboard off my own boat. And he was bitter and hard and confused. Went back home. He said, well, I'm going to start life all over. And he did. And he spent several months building another boat, like the first one. So after a long time, he had that boat ready, and he put down the ocean. He went out to sea again. And sure enough, the very same thing happened again. He looked out, and there was a man on a raft. And now he was torn, because he remembered his original horrible experience, and yet another part of him said, you can't leave a man out there to drift like that. You'll be responsible for his life if you don't. So he's torn. So very reluctantly, he went over and picked the man up and put him on the boat. A little later, another man. Later, another woman. Pretty soon, 9 or 10 people on his boat again, and pretty soon the very same thing happened again. All these grateful people turned against him. But he said, I'm going to be smart this time. I'm going to get rid of them. So he said, we're going into along the coast here, deserted part of the coast. I need to pull the boat up to make a minor repair. What he was going to do is get them ashore and then take off real fast. And what happened, when he got ashore, they took off with the boat. And he said to himself, it happened again. So he wandered along the foggy coast, and it got dark, and he was cold and miserable. And he vowed he would never, never again pick up another castaway. He said, this is the way people are. I'm not going to ever pick up a lost human being again. I'm going to stay away from them. That was his vow. So as he walked along the coast, with great relief, he saw a light ahead of him. And as he got closer, here it was, a tall lighthouse. So he went to the bottom of it, and there's a sign on the door that said, come in, walk upstairs. So he opened the lighthouse door, closed it behind him, walked up the circular staircase up to the top. There was another door there. You could see a light under it. So he knocked lightly. A voice said, come in. So he went in, and there was a man seated in a chair there who was obviously the lighthouse keeper. And it was a combination lighthouse equipment there around, and his own little living quarters. Apparently the man lived there alone. So the lighthouse keeper greeted him, said, sit down. I see you've had some trouble. And the boat owner sat down, and over a cup of coffee he told him the story. And he noticed, the boatman, as he told the story of his 2 horrible experiences, he noticed that the lighthouse keeper was nodding all along, as if he understood already what had happened. So when the man was through telling of his disasters, the lighthouse keeper just quietly nodded, and he said, you may have noticed that I was nodding. That was because I understood everything that had happened to you. And the boat owner said, well, you may, but I don't. Here, I'm nice to these people. I do everything for them, and they turn against me. I don't understand that at all. And the lighthouse keeper said, well, I'll explain it to you if you'd like. I've been here for many, many years. As a matter of fact, I have a special name for the castaways. different kind of a name that you have. I call them shark people. That's exactly what they are, shark people. They have the nature of a shark more than that of a human being. And you want to hear something more shocking than that? These castaways that you picked up, let me tell you what they were doing out there. This is how they live their life. This is their profession. They do it all day long, all year long. And if you were to go out and pick some more of them up, you would recognize familiar faces, because this is what they do. They appear to be pathetic, and they ask for your help. And they appear to be so grateful. And then when the right time comes, they take over. They take your boat and loot it. Afterward, wreck it. They do this over and over. This is their nature. They have no other profession in life but to do that over and over. And of course the boat owner was shocked by that. He couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe that there are certain kind of human beings on this planet who do just that, who pretend to be lost, take over the boat, wreck it, and then start all over again. He couldn't believe it. And he said, "Is this what you're telling me true?" And the lighthouse keeper said, "Nothing is more true, but you're going to have to see for yourself." And I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But I want you to remember something. Here the lighthouse keeper said. He said, "I want you to remember that your boat belongs only to you." And the boat owner said, "Would you repeat that, please?" And the lighthouse keeper said, "Your boat belongs only to you." Now I want you to notice how I phrased that. Your boat belongs only to you. And here's what I mean by that. No one can ever own your boat, own your life, but yourself. And you have all this false sense of responsibility, and you have all these feelings of guilt about not picking up those castaways. It's a great truth of the great sea that your boat belongs only to you. Therefore, it's wrong for you to pick them up. Not just a foolish thing, you're violating a law of life when you stop and pick them up, because you're inviting them to destroy you. You're inviting them right in. They have no choice but to pull all these tricks on you. And the man thought about that a little bit. He said, "My boat belongs only to me. Then if that's true, then it is also true that I need have nothing whatever to do with them, no matter how much they cry out in the fog, 'Save me.'" And the lighthouse keeper said, "Now you've got it, absolutely. And until you do see this, you're going to pick them up and repeat over and over and over the same disastrous experiences." And the man was stunned by this. He had never heard of such a thing before. But it all made sense to him. And here's what he said to the lighthouse keeper. He said, "Okay, I've learned my lesson. Never again will I go out in the open sea with my boat." And the lighthouse keeper said, "Oh, just a minute now. You've made a mistake, and I want to correct it before it goes any further. You will go out in the open sea. You won't stay away from the challenge out there. You will go out. You will get a third boat, and you'll start all over, and you'll go right out there, and you will watch those people crying for your help, pleading for your help with pathetic faces, and you will refuse to pick them up." The man said, "All right, I don't fully understand that, but I'll try it and see what happens." Remember now, the lighthouse keeper said as the man got up to go, your boat belongs only to you." So the boat owner went out, spent several months building a new boat, got down the ocean, went out to the sea again. A little bit nervous as to what was going to happen to him, but with a new kind of insight and knowledge up in his mind. And he didn't know exactly how he was going to react when the first castaway was sighted, but he was going to find out how he'd react. A few days later, there it happened again. A very pathetic couple, man and woman, out on the life raft. He saw them in a distance. He went toward them a little bit. He saw them waving, saw them pleading with him. He saw there was no food or anything on the raft. And they had sad faces, and they looked so very pleased at the possibility of rescue. And he looked out at their faces, and he looked inside himself, and he remembered what the lighthouse keeper said. And he swayed toward going and picking them up, and then he swayed back the other way. He didn't know what to do. So he prayed. And he said, may heaven help me for what I'm doing, but I am not going to pick them up. And he didn't. He felt condemned. He felt guilty, ashamed. He was going against everything he'd ever been taught about how to treat people, how to be good, how to be decent, how to cooperate, how to give yourself to the world in order to make it a better world and a safer and secure world. He was going against all that of a lifetime, and it tore him apart to turn away, but he turned away. And a little later he saw another man on a life raft, another derelict, another castaway. And the thought came to his mind as he looked at that next man. He said, I understand. I'm looking at one of the shark people. I finally understand why it is not just necessary, but right in God's eyes to turn away. In the eyes of truth, it is right for me to turn away, not wrong. It's right, it's necessary, and I will do it, and he did it. And he did it for the next several weeks, every time going through a new burning of hell inside. But he knew it was the right thing to do, the only thing to do. And finally, after he'd turned away from a dozen or so people, he saw something strange out on that ocean. Something that confirmed the rightness of everything the lighthouse keeper had said. And what he saw was this. He saw all dozen of those people that he had refused. He saw all their rafts coming from over here and over there, all the rafts coming together so that they were all just a few feet from each other in the water. And all 12 of them were turned toward him, and they were raising their fists and shaking their fists at him and cursing him. And he saw the look of sharks on their faces, and that settled it. And he understood the wisdom of the lighthouse keeper who told him, no, you mustn't avoid the sea. You go back into the sea and you go through the internal conflict. You go through it and come out on the other side. And if you remember what you were told, you will come out right. And he followed that advice to the very end. And you know what he did for the rest of his life? He sailed the ocean in his boat. He sailed it where he wanted to go. And he understood the evil out in that surrounding sea of all those people who were trying to do it to him again, and he knew better. Oh, he knew so clear in his mind that lighthouse keeper knew exactly what he was talking about. And now the boatman himself knew what the lighthouse keeper knew, that all those people are nothing but deceit and destruction. And him wanting to live his own life must have nothing whatever to do with them. And he didn't. And he was never tricked again. He was never ever hurt again by those people. The shark people will get you if you don't watch out. They're abundant. They are just waiting for you. And I'll tell you what excites them most of all. What a thrill the shark people get out on those rafts when they see at a distance the first turning of your boat toward them, the very first switching of your boat toward them, and they get so excited because they know they've got another one. They've got someone else that they can begin to smile at and promise at and be nice to. And inevitably and always the flip-flop will come. Ever had an experience with a shark people? Huh? How many of you are shark people? That's why you're still taken in by shark people, because you're one yourself. You know that. They're just waiting for the first sign of stupidity and weakness. And stupidity and weakness consist of a lack of insight into reality, into the way things are in the ocean of life. You think you understand it? You don't understand that, the vastness of that ocean, as long as you still fall prey to their attempts to make you feel guilty, to make you feel ashamed at passing them up. A free spirit, a healthy mind, a person who really is in tune with the universe, he passes them by without even thinking about them. He's gone through that stage of thinking about them. At the start, when to free yourself of the shark people, you're out there and you go into intellectualization. You go into thinking of the knowledge that you gain from the lighthouse keeper. But that's not enough. So you keep thinking back and forth. Well, maybe this, here it is. This man is the exception. There must be a few good people out there. Every one of them is a shark. And so you're still thinking back and forth, hopeful, and always so flattered. The man is going to make breakfast for you. Sooner or later, you're going to be making his breakfast. And the boat won't be in your name anymore. After going out on that ocean, not avoiding it, you mustn't avoid it, going out on the voyage, it'll finally come to you that the thought part has done its part. You've been given the knowledge, you've been given the facts, you've gone through all this emotional pain over picking them up, and the other emotional pain of refusing to pick them up, and feeling that, what kind of a monster am I? There's that man and that woman pleading with me to pick them up, and I refuse to do it. What kind of a monster am I? That's exactly what they want you to think. That's how they get into your boat, by preying on your weakness, on your stupidity. Now, if you want to stop being taken by society, don't stop for anyone. You can't live your life while you have them in the boat. You are all alone in that boat, and that's the only way you can be happy. They'll never give up. They'll try every possible trick to try to get you to stop for them. I said a minute ago that the intellectual part eventually is transcended by a higher part, by awareness, simple awareness. So you take your boat out, and you have the pure pleasure of going where you want to go, doing what you want to do, think what you want to think, go to visiting the island or not visiting that. You are living your own life. This is your voyage, the voyage you want to take. See? So when you spot a derelict, a shark person out there on the raft, you notice them, but you don't even go into thought about them anymore. You're way above that. You see them over there, and you see them over there. There's no emotional reaction at all. You understand it too well to even have to think about it. Are you following this? Do you understand that? You don't have to think about it. You're free of them utterly. They will never stop trying. You understand? Because this is their nature. There's no way they can stop trying to deceive and destroy. This is their nature. It's the nature of a shark to do that. But they don't know that you're onto them. That's because that's their stupidity, see? They'll try every possible trick. Aren't you in contact with people who try to con you, and you silently know them and you don't fall into their trap? This is the way it is out on the sea when you understand all these things. You see them, and you see them trying, and you don't even pay attention to them anymore. You used to. And you used to get a false excitement. You used to get a false pleasure out of arguing with yourself. Should I pick them up or shouldn't I? And you went beyond that, where you saw the folly of occupying your life with wondering whether you should pick them up or not. You know 100% you must have nothing to do with them. Nothing. And truth, God, reality is on your side on that position, because it's the right side. And so you go out into the world, and in your mind somewhere, when they try some sort of a special pleading, a pathetic look on their face, or they promise something, all this is so well understood it doesn't penetrate. You just go on your way. The happy voyage consists of passing up every castaway in the ocean who tries to get into your boat. And after a while, I will guarantee you this, absolutely, or rather truth will guarantee it. all the guilt you have and all the shame and all the false moralities that you used to have, it'll all fall away, and you'll never be tormented by that again. How can you be tormented when you know what is right and are doing what is right? You're tormented when you do what is wrong, because you're still trying to get a false reward for yourself from it, you see? When you're living true, when you're living right, when you are in 100% of your own boat and determined to stay that way, the sea is yours to do anything you want. That's real pleasure. That's real fun. It's a beautiful voyage. All right, let's have questions and open discussion for a while.
Another trick a sharp person will use is looking up at the man on the boat and saying, I've been a victim, like you, of the shark people. Take me up and we can ally together against the shark people.
Yes, that was a good comment, Mark.
I'm glad I didn't miss this lecture.
Is there something in you that it rings true to you? Larry.
It is very hard to get beyond the false morality or the false teaching of there's that pour down the water and you guys can help you. It's hard to get beyond that.
Therefore, in connection with what Larry said, do you see why religious people want nothing to do with this class? Sharks swim with sharks.
Two comments. Sharks are voracious feeders, and also they're very sensitive to any kind of vibration. They always move to that
Right. You are being watched by the shark people wherever you go. Let's see what the sharks want from you. Well, you could name a dozen things, couldn't you? They want your money, they want your friendship, they want marriage maybe, they want sex, they want your approval, they want your vote. Shark people want something from you, right? And they're watching for your first little sign of weakness. They're watching your face, and if they can see doubt on your face, they get excited. That person is doubtful, therefore he's confused, therefore I can persuade him. Pat.
One mistake we make sometimes is to think we can reform a shark.
I'll tell you what. You go down in the ocean and swim out in the sea and try to change a shark into a salmon.
I took much of the meaning of the story to be referring to psychic images that are inside of us. That is, if we reject the psychic images about the way we're supposed to live life, or as Larry put it, this false morality, the shark people out there will no longer tempt us. The images that are getting on board our psychic system, which we invite because we want something from them, are precisely what feed on us voraciously.
Well, let me take one point on that comment. I told you before, the shark people never stop trying because they don't know that you're on to them. They don't know. You go into a store somewhere and maybe even something, a commercial. Maybe you're buying something and you can see the man trying to get you to buy more and you really want and all that. The sharks will always try. He doesn't know that you come to this class and you've learned a few things. He doesn't know that you're on to him. You're watching. You've learned to observe people, watching their little manner, their casual approach, for example. Well, I think maybe we could work something out. Yeah, something like that.
I see at least 50 shark people in me.
Right.
I see the shark person in my mother who calls me about once a month, and then she always steers the conversation around Steve. She doesn't know what's happening, and she wants to get me involved in some kind of a psychological back and forth with her. And I never say anything because as far as I know, she's on.
Now remember, if you still fear the shark people, you are still susceptible to them. Because they can see your fear. Isn't fear a part of confusion? And they will work on that. So this means you have to work on having your mind so clear, understand everything that the Lighthouse keeper said, so clear that there's no fear projected toward them at all. They'll spot it. Oh, they'll spot it. You say they feel the vibrations in the water. They'll get excited and race over. Push people away. Get them out of your life. Don't attract. This is the opposite of what a sick society says. Surround yourself with friends, nice, loving friends. How many of you have some former loving friends? Hand somewhere.
Somehow the shark story connects with one of the statements in 60 Ways to be a Sick and Unpleasant Human Being, where you said if someone wants something from you and you don't go along with them and they threaten to do something to you, dare them to do it, or dare them to walk out or something like that. You see them turn, you see them flip-flop right there when you go against that.
Don't let a person make even the first step of success toward you. Once they've made the first one, then if you are weak, which you are, they wouldn't make the first one, then the second one becomes a little easier because they're using that to mount. See? And if it goes so far, it goes up to, say, 10 steps, up toward you. If you get to 10 steps, you will find it increasingly difficult to throw them off, and they'll just be waiting for the flip-flop, and you will be afraid of the flip-flop because there's something inside of you that senses that if you stop them after the 8th step, they're going to turn. You know that. Don't you know that?
Right.
You know, don't you, that they're going to turn. And in order to avoid the crisis of them turning on you, you'll go to the 9th step, 10th, the 15th step. And now they've got you, and now you're seething with hatred, aren't you, at that person you've got in your life, taking over your house, taking over your life, taking over whatever. Stop them at the very start.
This is the crisis point when we begin to waver, when we have firmly yes or no. It's a real crisis point.
I remembered one of my own phrases a minute ago. Push people away. There is no human being on earth, with the exception of a few, who won't try to take advantage of your weakness. They have to. Push them away. Even if you think they're going to, let them hate you if they want. Remember I said last night, it's your thinking about their hatred that bothers you. Oh, they hate me. What do you care whether they hate you or not? What has it to do with you that another person hates you? It has nothing to do with you except that you think about it. And you don't have to think about it. You can be aware of it, which is a different thing. Because there's an I in the thinking about it, and there's no I in awareness.
Well, you've already pretty much answered what I was going to say.
Pardon?
You've already pretty much answered what I was going to say.
Fine.
If you didn't really understand that we would have devoured you a long time ago.
Oh.
Like every other group.
I know that. I'm looking at a bunch of sharks. I know that. And I have the new rule for you. See that box? Don't you dare ever touch that box. Don't you put anything in it, and don't you ever take anything out of it. If you have something for me, you set it alongside or somewhere I see it. Don't ever again, any of you ever touch that box or anything in it. If I give you 1 inch, some of you would be pawing through it. You stay out of that box.
What you said about pushing people away, seeing everything that people are trying to do on you, there's no way possible to tell the world that that's positive. That is a very positive act.
This morning you heard a message of love and compassion.
For me, it was just words coming all those years to understand what you spoke of this moment. It was just the highlight of my life.
Wasn't it an interesting experience this morning that you understood with your feelings as well as with your mind? Wasn't that interesting? You're on.
Last night after meeting when I went home, my children were watching a program, No Feelings. As a child, I can remember the story, but I thought it was the same type of fairy tale. And last night when I was watching it, there were hundreds and hundreds
Right.
of truths that were in that story.
That's why it endured, because it wasn't just a story for amusement, but certain writers, fairy tales, for example, have psychological truth in back of them. That's why you remember it better. There was a land in which there lived a young man who grew up having a very normal boyhood. He roamed the hills, and he went to school, and he read books, and he lived a very normal life as a young man, a happy boyhood. As he grew a little older, he was walking down the street of the city one day, and he noticed something that he never ever noticed before. He knew that it was there before, but being young, he wasn't interested in this sort of thing, but he finally noticed it. And what he noticed, there were a certain number of men, not too many of them, who walked down the street with a certain kind of a helmet on their head. It was a very attractive helmet, well designed with gold ornaments on it. And he also noticed that these helmets, which were relatively rare, and yet a number of people had them, they had different colors to them. Some were black, some were black and white, some had 3 colors, different colors of the helmets. So he went home and he asked his older brother, I noticed these helmets that maybe one man out of 5,000 wore in town. What are these helmets all about? And his brother said, well, about time that you understood this. It's very interesting. The men wearing these helmets are called helmeted heroes. And they receive these very special helmets for achieving a certain special kind of success in our country. What they do is that they are given certain dangerous and awesome tasks, which when they accomplish it, they're giving a hero for a helmet for a hero. So the brother explained a little more. For example, there's a black helmet for a young man who has achieved the success, according to our society here, who's achieved the success of going out in the dark woods and living there all alone without any help, relying only on his own resources, and he gets a black helmet for it. And of course he's honored and considered one of the great men of the society. So all these men who perform various tasks are called helmeted heroes. That's how we create our heroes, by giving them certain things to achieve, and if they succeed, then they become great men in our country. And by the way, the older brother said, I'm about to leave tomorrow, as a matter of fact, for the dark woods to see if I can win one of these helmets from society by going out in the dark woods and staying there all alone, finding my own food in the woods, no help from anyone, bearing the loneliness and the insecurity of it. I'm leaving tomorrow, and if I succeed in staying there for 6 months, we'll have a hero in the family. So the next day he left. His parents and brothers and sisters said goodbye, and the officials took him out to the dark woods, and he made it. 6 months later he came back, and he was given a grand welcome by his own neighborhood and own family, and in a big public ceremony downtown he was given a black helmet. He was now a helmeted hero. And the younger brother, of course, looked up and admired the successful older brother. And he got real excited, too. He said, that's the way society works. This is how to become somebody. Pass these tests that society has set up, and I'll be a hero, too. And he wanted so badly to be recognized by others, just as his brother had. So the time came, he got a little bit older, and he was given his first test. The first one was staying out in the woods for 6 months. So he was taken out, edge of town, walked into the woods, and from the very start, the whole woods overwhelmed him. He was lonely, he was scared, and it rained while he was out there, and he cried. Here he was, a grown-up young man, but he cried, and he was glad no one could see him cry. And where he managed to find some place to sleep, he would have nightmares, and he'd shout out at night, and he woke himself up with his own shouting. He managed to stay just 2 weeks out. And in great shame and sorrow and defeat, he just knew he couldn't take it anymore. So he came to the edge of the woods, and when he had walked a mile or so out of them, the officials from town saw him, and they came over and they gave him a pat on the back and took him back home. And when he got in the house, his older brother was there, and so was the rest of his family, and they all looked at him, and they, of course, knew what had happened. He had failed the test of becoming a helmeted hero. And the younger brother saw something on the face of his older brother that made him really hate someone for the first time in his life. And what he saw was a snicker on his older brother's face, and he knew that his older brother was glad that he had failed, because now, of course, the older brother was the only hero in the family. While it made him very angry, he also determined that he was going to pass the next test, which turned out to be, for a white helmet, you had to go up the start of a long raging river and take a canoe down it, 100 miles down to the end of the river. And if you succeeded in that, you became a hero, helmeted hero with a white helmet. Failed that too. After a few miles of sputtering and drinking half the river, and being scared and bumping into rocks along the way and breaking the canoe down, went off the side and was getting met by officials and taken home. Began to understand that he had certain feelings in him for the first time he'd never had before, which was a great conflict. The conflict of wanting to succeed as he's told he had to succeed, and yet not being able to do it. He had one test left. And that was go for a red helmet. A volcano being red, he was told, third test, you go up to the volcano some distance from town, you walk up the side of it, and you walk inside the rim of it, and there's a trail that leads all around the inside of this hot, steaming volcano. You pass that test, come back, and you'll be one of the helmeted heroes. He walked up, and it was hard enough just hiking up the rocks, past the rocks up to the volcano. Went inside, was in great fear of his life from the moment he descended inside the volcano. Started walking 50 or 100 yards around. Saw his feet slipping out from under him. He saw all that steaming lava down there. And he just managed to get back in time. He came out of the volcano and went home. And later that night, he heard a remark that changed the course of his life. And what he heard was his father talking to his mother in the next room, and his own father made the remark, I don't think he'll amount to much. And he knew that his father was talking about him. And he also lost his girlfriend, because his girlfriend didn't want to run around with a loser. She wanted a man who had a helmet, a helmeted hero. His life went downhill inwardly. He was in great torment. He was in the impossible position of wanting to be someone, and life wouldn't let him be someone. And he didn't know what to do about it except to turn into bitterness and inner violence and hatred of everyone, because he considered everyone his enemy now, because they had assigned the task to him and he had failed. And he wanted so much to be one of those who could walk down the street with a helmet of one color or another and say, I'm a hero. So his life went on this way for a number of years. One day he came out of his house, and there was a stranger on the sidewalk in front of his home. And the stranger apparently was looking around for a certain address, so the man said, can I help you find your address? And the stranger said, I found it. As a matter of fact, you're just the man I'm looking for. I come from another country, as you can probably tell. I don't dress like you do. And I have a message from you from the other country. The people from my country have been watching you, and they think it's about time that you were told something. And he was astonished. He said, well, what's the message from your country? And the stranger said, the message is, this country is loaded with helmeted zeros. And he said, pardon? He said, helmeted zeros. I know you call them heroes here, but we understand what's going on in your country here. And we know hearts and minds and spirits of the people who live here. And we thought it was just about time that someone as bad off as you are has a chance to recover, has a chance to understand what's going on. And so they had a conversation out there on the sidewalk very casually. And the stranger explained a few things to him. He said, you know, all this has been set up as a gigantic conspiracy by people who want to be heroes, and all they have is something on the outside. This is the only way they can tell someone else that they're right, that they're true, that they're courageous, that they're heroic. And if you'd like to do something, sir, the stranger talked to the resident of this mad country, I want you to watch what happens to these people when they take their helmets off. And you'll see that they're not courageous at all, that they're an entirely different kind of human being. They have nothing on the inside that matches what they're supposed to have as shown on the outside. They're not helmeted heroes at all. And we would call them zeros simply because they have nothing of their own. The stranger went away, and the man began thinking about this astonishing adventure that he had had. From the time he was a small child, he tracked it back, and he could see the whole thing, how his hopes had been developed by the plan, by the scheme that his country had set up. If you do this, you will be a hero. If you fail, we still accept you, but you're not a hero in our eyes anymore. And he understood what the stranger meant as he went away. You look at these helmeted heroes, and you'll see that they have nothing of their own, nothing of true value. And this fascinated him. His own losses, his own humiliation, losing his girlfriend to the helmeted heroes. And he began to understand one thing, that there was a turning point in his life, but he didn't know where it was turning toward or what was beyond his present life. And he looked, every day he went out and tried to find this stranger again, but he didn't see him till a long time later, a year later. He finally saw him down in the street and went over and talked to him. And the stranger said, I know you've been looking for me, but you still have a lot to learn from yourself for a while. So now you're ready for the next part of the lesson, which is this. And I would like you to listen to this too, please. The stranger said, if you'll listen carefully, I'll tell you what your problem is. Your problem is not with this country you're living in, that you were born into. Your problem is not with your brother making sneering remarks when you didn't pass. Your problem isn't with your parents. It isn't with the people who set up the success system in which you failed. It isn't that at all. Let me tell you what it is, and you'll have to think long and hard about this, but it will change everything. You lose all your heartache, all your pain. You won't care whether you have this or that person in your life at all, because you'll be a free human being. Now here's what your problem is. You are thinking about what other people are thinking about you. And the stranger said, let me repeat that. You are thinking about what other people are thinking about you. But you have to understand, and look at the gold in this. You have to understand that you're thinking about what they're thinking is your thought itself. It belongs to you. And if you understand this, you will see clearly what you've been trying to see for this year or so. You've been trying to see where the problem is. Wouldn't it be nice to know, the stranger said to the man, still talking to him, to know that the only place the problem resides, the only place it resides in the way you're thinking, and you're thinking all wrong. And he explained many other things to him, for example, things that we've explained in this class. That you think about other people and think about how they think toward you. You think about that in order to make your existence seem real. You understand, those of you watching this film and listening here in this room, that you are not the thoughts that you project out into this world? Why do you tie yourself down to your own thoughts, bounce them back, bounce them off of other people, and then think about what they are thinking about you? Now this makes you very nervous, because you have certain idealistic ideas about yourself in which you flatter yourself, or in which you see yourself as a victim, as a martyr, or whatever. You have all these thoughts, and you look around and hope that other people, maybe your friends or relatives, are going to think in the same way that you do in order to make you feel right. And if you do that, you are not right, you are wrong. Why do any of you here in this room fall for the conspiracy of society? And you're falling for it tonight. You've fallen for it before tonight. Society has set it up, and it's set up its heroes, whether they're political or military or religious. In what particular camp does your hero dwell? Is it another human being, maybe a relative of some kind? You want to be like your mother? You want to be like your father? You set up all these ideals about what you want to be like, and it can never live out that way. How can it ever be, if even on the simplest of level? You know that life does not duplicate itself exactly, and why should you want it? Don't you want to live your own life and let it unfold as it unfolds, instead of putting a directive on top of it which has been pressed down on you by society? You know what you've been through in this world. You understand in your heart exactly what I'm talking about, because you know the frustration that has resulted by you trying to live up to the impositions of society. We all fell for the promises, didn't we? They told us if we would pass through certain tests, if we would do certain things, we would be rewarded. Do you know why anyone sets up a test for another human being? In order to give himself as a reward. Don't you understand that human beings who are empty in their spirit can't possibly ever do one thing for anyone else? How can egotism ever be freedom? How can a sick mind ever do healthy things? How can a person who is trying to have a helmet of his own to call himself a hero, how can he have any concern for you? And if he seems to have, it's in furtherance of his own aims, which he will disguise very carefully. Now that is the problem of society, that they have set this up, and we believed in it, we followed it out, and consequently, of course, we got hurt, and we got bitter, and we got hateful, and we never knew what a blunder we made. That stranger coming from the other world, you know what world I'm talking about, don't you? A world that has nothing to do with this insanity, this wanting to be someone, wanting an ego victory or whatever. This other country is watching in this class itself, in the whole world, for a few men, for a few women who have gone through it all and don't want to go through it anymore. Someone who is willing to disbelieve everything he's ever been told by anyone dwelling in this land that the young man lived in. You're going to have to become a conscious outlaw. You're going to, let's put it a little different way, you're going to have to love truth more than you love falsehood. You're going to have to love something that is invisible more than you love the visible. And there's a tough one for most people. An impossible one for most people. How many women, foolish women, cling to a man because he appears strong, because he's physical and he's there physically? How many equally foolish men see a woman and he likes what he gets from her, and she's company and someone to talk to? Until two sick people, two lost people, two scared people come together, bring their lives together, cling together, and never ever learn that there's an invisible world that they could have had. Had they chosen to put the invisible world, this other country world, before their immediate so-called securities, their immediate comforts. Let's go back to the point. Are you aware of how much you think about what other people think about you? If you're not, then you watch your behavior and you try to find things that you do for other people so that they will think well of you, or things that you avoid doing that you'd like to do. You'd like to be sarcastic sometimes, wouldn't you? But you want them to think well toward you so that you can keep your illusion going that you're okay and you're not. The very fact that you have to do that means you're not okay. Look in your own mind and see how you're always thinking about how the other person thinks about you. How can another person's thoughts hurt you in any way? But you're thinking about their thoughts, thinking that maybe you have offended them and they're going to get revenge, or they're going to leave you, or they're going to think less of you. Why don't you risk it? Why don't you risk losing everything? It's the only way you're going to get free of this hoax that society played on you, that if you pass their test, you'll be okay, and if you don't, you're a disgrace or a failure. We'll tolerate you, but you just didn't make it, and you believed in that. Because you believed in the false story of success, you now believe in the false story of failure. I know that those of you watching this film, you here too, I know that you believe in failure. You believe in failure because you believe in yourself as a failure, and then it's all nothing at all. It's a zero. It's empty. It's hollow. It's a long, long, long struggle to give up being a success or a failure. And if you don't understand what I just said, you go home tonight and you think about it thoroughly. I don't care what your position is, whether you're a businessman or you're at home taking care of the children. Whatever your position is, whether you're young or old, you go home and you find out where thoughts, success and failure, alternate with each other in 1,000 different ways. If they are still alternating in you, this means you're still living in that country. And the stranger, which is truth, is the only one that can rescue you from it. It's not trying to rescue you from anything but your own delusory thinking about being somebody or about being nobody. Shall I tell you a little bit about yourself, a little bit more? You're so afraid of being nobody. Because if you're nobody, then how are you going to attract other people into your life whom you feel you need? I'll tell you, if you listen to that stranger, that truth, come to the very end of everything that he's talking about, you will live in an utterly different land where there's no striving at all, there's no shame, and anything that your father said to you or your mother did to you or that your brother did, all that will have no meaning to you at all, because you've seen that sick society sets up sick standards in order to reward themselves. And if you are still suffering, if you're still afraid, I am telling you that you are still a part of the system that gives the rewards of the helmets, the helmeted heroes, because you still want one for yourself. And that's why you're still scared. in this other land, there's no need for helmets at all. There's no need for glory. There's no need for one individual to be separate from another. There's just one great big unity, of unity which you can't think about, which exists, and you know it from something higher than you're thinking about it. And then someday, some of you in this room may go back to that dreary land that the young man was brought up in. You may go back to that land, and you may be the stranger. You may understand things so well that the king of that other land will send you back to talk to people, to the few people who want to hear, who want to listen. And you'll be able to talk very clearly, perfectly to anyone who wants to know these answers, because you'll know them yourself. Because you know that you were born in this world, and you know the parallel between the story tonight and what happened to you, don't you? You remember what tests you were told about, that if you succeeded in business, you succeeded in marriage, you succeeded in becoming popular. Didn't work out, did it? You thought you were going to get the helmet, and it always evaded you. There's something wrong with the instructions for heroism that this society that we live in has given us, and you had better see through them for your sake. But you'll come back to that land because you first taught yourself, allowed yourself to be taught. You're learnable, and then you go out and talk to other people. But first of all, start with yourself. We must be as efficient as possible, and there are ways to be more efficient than we are. Now, all of you who work, think first of all of the word efficiency. And when you're going to make announcements, you get a list after this, and you get a list after this, the things you're supposed to say at that meeting. Or whatever your work is, you get a long list of things that do's and don'ts in one case. I don't like myself personally to be inefficient, and I try to catch it wherever I can. You do the same. This is a part of your inner work to use your mind right. And I look around and I see so much carelessness, and I'm not avoiding it in me either. I see so much carelessness, just plain old sloppiness. You don't jolt yourself awake. Joe got up last night twice, and he didn't once mention we have classes in Boulder City. What'd we go in there for? Now wake up. Don't be complacent. Think. Give yourself a jolt sometime and think. Would you repeat what you said?
It's no wonder we are so brainwashed from a child on, if we barely find the way out.
It's a wonder anyone finds their way out. If it wasn't, you listen to this, if it wasn't for that stranger, none of us would. Didn't you try to find your way out, and all you did was get in deeper all the time? You can't remain an atheist and find the way out. You have to begin to be should we use common terms for once? You have to begin to believe in the right way. And you must want to recognize the stranger when he comes up and starts talking to you. That he has a message out of this world. If you won't expose yourself to the shock and the jolt of being told what you're really like, you're just going to go downhill. This applies to everyone in this class. If you refuse the shock, but you don't even know you're refusing the shock, because you cover that up with verbalizations, with pillows. You put a pillow up in your mind to prevent yourself from being shocked by some of these things. You don't even know they're a shock. And you don't know they're a shock because you interpret them the wrong way the minute you hear them. That man is insulting me. That man thinks that he's God. We've got a whole list of the brays. So I won't go into that. You're on.
Even the so-called spiritual paths are helmets.
Of course they are. You'll get a certain reward here and certainly one in heaven. Somebody's going to be awful shocked later on after this life. If you want to believe, if you believe in the lies of another person, you're a liar yourself. Oh, you poor pathetic people. You let yourself get away with it, don't you? You're so indulgent with yourself. We have talked in this class about self-centered talking for years and years and years. For years we have talked about you watching yourself engaging in self-centered dialogue, and you still do it, and you still don't see yourself doing it. Now that's just the outside. If you drive home tonight, you're going to be talking to yourself in your mind, aren't you? And you never see that. The situation is so bad, we're going to have to not double, not triple, but 10 times our efforts to shock ourselves, to risk something. That's it. Risk something. Risk losing something that is precious to you. But you have to see it first. You have to see that you're not risking anything. If you are, do you know what the word surly means? How many here, you all know what the word surly means? A surly manner, a surly expression. Risk your surliness, sourness. See, you don't see sourness as a defense. You don't see it as your idea of a helmet, a reward. I'm a hero. I can be sour and sarcastic towards someone. You don't see it. That is your false reward. I am someone who can feel superior to you by snapping at you. What does it take to get you to see what you did to yourself just today? And think of the thousands, tens of thousands of days that you have lived on earth, that you have missed completely because you won't stop right in the middle of your dinner, or of writing something at your desk at home, or of reading a book. You won't stop right in the middle of that and say, what's going on inside of me right now? Your self-dramatics, for example. Your shame at remembering that remark. Every one of you in this room can think of a dozen remarks that someone said to you, various people said to you over the years, right? Nod your heads. And they hurt, don't they? How about remarks, foolish things where you suddenly fell asleep and said something to someone else, and they recur and come back to you, and you're so ashamed of it. Now you listen to me. The next time you think, for example, of a remark, a stupid remark, a foolish remark, a remark you made and then wish you could sink through the floor, right? The next time that comes back to your memory, I want you to know that you are getting a false helmet out of it. That is, you are getting can you believe it? You're getting a sense of heroism, which is a sense of individuality out of it. Oh, what I said, I'm just so ashamed of it. Don't you catch that? The shameful thought comes up, and you go into the second thought, don't you? You go into the dramatics, don't you? You go into, oh, if I could have just been awake at that moment, I would have saved myself years of self-torment, because that thought with all its powerful feeling comes back inside me all the time and torments me. You can stop it the next time it tries to take you over. If you understand that you are falling under its power with your own consent and with nothing else. Who else compels you to feel ashamed over remembering that thought? You tell me. You can't. Only you, with your weakness, allow it to go through your mind and torment you again. And you like that torment. For example, you might think that you're being humble or something. You're feeling sorry for saying that. You're not sorry at all. What you're doing is enjoying it. You're enjoying your own shame, your own pain. Now, I have explained it to you. Now, can you see that the next time this remark that you made 5 years ago, 20 years ago, this comment, this sarcasm, this snapping at someone, at your former wife, former husband, boss, friend, or whatever, or something that you said that was a disgrace for you to have said. All right. I used the word just now, disgrace, very consciously, because when I say disgrace, I don't mean disgrace. I'm using the word because I don't want you to feel disgrace the next time you think about the disgrace. No? Are you following? Can you say the word disgrace without feeling disgrace because you're using the word purely and not going into the second thought, not going to the emotion over it? You must remember the event in the past where you came out of that event defeated, you failed, as the young man did in the story. You must remember where you failed and everybody scorned you and laughed at you and made sarcastic remarks toward you. You must remember the event without calling yourself anything at all. But you have to see that it's a lifelong habit for you to call yourself something. Call yourself foolish. Call yourself stupid for having done that or said that. No, no, no. You can't get away with that lie anymore. You can't get away with calling yourself evil anymore. You can't if you want out. If you want the thrill, the exhilaration, then you can call yourself foolish, stupid, or whatever, and you have your helmet of feeling foolish. Now listen. I'm going to explain very simply what I've explained in the last 5 minutes. Summary. There is a part in every suffering, lost human being that just loves to thrill. Now that thrill, as you know, has hundreds of varieties. The thrill of self-blame. The thrill of permitting the mental movie to come back for the 10,000th time. Will you listen to what I am telling you instead of to the voice on that movie and seeing the movie itself? I am telling you, if you permit it, you are destroying your opportunity for living in eternity. Because that is time. And you have loved that more than you've loved the timeless state. You have to catch yourself in the act of consenting to feeling ashamed. God is not what you think He is. You set up your own idea of what God, truth, freedom is like. And it's always like what you have been. It is not like that at all. Get it through your heads that your heads can't see the true state. You can know it. Something inside of you can know it. And then you'll understand everything I said about living in the timeless state where you're not you are no longer tormented by devils, which you now are, aren't you? I know you are. Some of you confess it in small ways up in front here when you give short talks. I am telling you, you don't have to be tormented by anything anymore because God says so. Who is God? To start with, God, truth, reality is something that is not your own mind. Now, your own mind, which has held you in prison all your life up to this point, your own mind says the opposite of what truth does. Your own mind is falsehood. It lies to you, and you were listening and consenting. You're saying, yes, you must be right because you're the only friend I've ever had. What you call your friend is your enemy, and something you don't know yet is your friend. Something you don't understand yet is your real friend, but you don't know truth yet. You do know the enemy, but you're calling the enemy your friend because you're afraid to lose it. Because you're afraid to lose you, because you are your own enemy, and that's all that exists of you presently. You and the enemy inside of you are one. You have no other life but that right now. And you cling to that for dear life because you don't know what's beyond it. You want to find out what's beyond that? Then you had better do more than come here and be shocked a little bit. You catch yourself walking across your living room and see what thought comes in and tries to steal your life away. Now, I've heard a few of you give very nice examples of that. And I could tell by the way you said it and exactly what you said that you're beginning to do this. But I want you to know that down in that dungeon, way down deep in that dungeon, if you've seen just 5 demons, I want you to know that that's the bare beginning. Because every demon, once he senses that you're on its track, will disguise himself as an angel and will deceive you. If you've seen 5 angels, 5 demons, that's great. But remember, there are 10,000 more, 20,000 more down in the depths of the dungeon, which is your own unawakened, undeveloped psychic system. This is the only chance you have. The truth here is the only chance you have. Don't miss the opportunity you have for living forever. Don't interpret that with your mind. You can't live forever. I have to use words. Your spirit, your essence, what is true in you can live forever. What is authentically happy and content can live forever. Because that's characteristics of truth, is it not? Are you sitting there and telling me that you want your forever to be you? You who have so much hatred for what's going on inside of you, so much fear, is that what you want to go on and on and on? Wake up! Look at the simple logic of it. Don't get complicated. You don't have to complicate it. All you have to do is begin to use your logic rightly, and it'll point out many things to you. It'll expand so that you see everything. You have deceived yourself into thinking that the time state, which is torturous and which you now live in, is eternity. And that is you lying to you. I'm onto this, and I want you to be onto this. That the devil calls himself an angel and says, stay with me and I will show you paradise. And you hear people, so-called religious people, philosophical people, talking about this as if it's true, as if they know what they're talking about. They are deceived, and they won't come to a class like this because they prefer their delusion. They prefer the lie that their nature is going to live on and on and on forever. It can't. Because anything that is born in time ends in time. Why don't you surrender your negativities, your sourness, your pretense that you understand life? Why don't you surrender your fears here tonight? Surrender your fears. Die to them. Give them up. Instead of letting your fears tell you that they are necessary to your survival in eternity. Listen to that. A devil called fear lies to you and says, I am eternity, stick with me, and you believe it. You believe it tonight, seated in front of me. I know it, because I know you're still afraid. Don't believe it anymore. I'm telling you something different. I'm telling you the exact opposite is true. That if you die to fear, you will have a state of non-fear, which is eternity. Now you think about that and work with that for a while.
When you gave your talk a little earlier about how I care about what others think, there was an automatic defense went off in my mind and said, oh, I don't care what other people think. Until I stopped and realized how angry or how much I burn when somebody says something that irritates me.
Critical.
Right. Then I know I care what other people think.
The evidence is in front of you, right? Yeah. All of us. It's a great experience to have someone criticize you, and then you don't go into any opposites at all. You notice how we always work in opposites when criticized? We either strike back or we pretend we're taking it humbly. Well, I guess so. I'm only human, you know. Try sometime when someone criticizes you to have no reaction at all. To hear it, to take it in, and have no reaction at all. And if you do that, you won't recreate that big faker that either pretends he's open-minded. I want to improve. I want you to tell me what's wrong with me. Don't do it.